Check 1, 2. Let us now settle into a spirit of worship with a moment of quiet to be followed by the music of River by Peter Cater, played by our music director, Matthew Johnson. You're also invited at this time to light a silent candle of joy or sorrow. In addition, this morning we are blessed to have once again the empty place at the table exhibit from the domestic violence program at the YWCA. This year, once again, we see the names of those whose lives have been taken during acts of domestic violence. If during the prelude and then following the service you would like to come and come closer to the table, you're invited to do so. Once again, words from my friend, the Reverend Dr. David Breeden. Spirit of compassion, named or nameless, within and among us, teach us to tend to ourselves and to tend to each other. May we tend to tenderness and patiently as seeds in spring. May our hearts be soft enough to feel another's ache, strong enough to hold that ache with grace. And when we fail, may we begin again, gently, with compassion for ourselves and each other. May this be our hope and vow, to practice love until it takes root. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Worcester, a congregation of love, hope, and justice, inspiring people to take on the challenges of a changing world. My name is Payson, and I am honored to be one of the ministers of this congregation. We begin by acknowledging that in Worcester, Massachusetts, we work, learn, live, and worship on the seized ancestral homeland of the Nipmuc people, who thrive and remain active as the Nipmuc tribe. If you'd like to learn more about the Nipmuc community, please see one of the brochures that's available in the foyer of the sanctuary. We offer a very special welcome to those of you who are new or visiting us for the first time this morning. We are delighted that you're here. We hope that you will join us in Fellowship Hall following the service for refreshments and conversation. If you have questions or desire more information about this service or any of its ministries and programs, please do not hesitate to ask. We invite you to fill out one of the cards found in the pews. These cards can be placed in the offering plate or given to one of the ushers or greeters this morning. For those of you who are joining us online this morning, we offer you a very special welcome. For safety purposes and so that we might come to know you better, we invite you, as you're able, to please place your name on your video feed. Please take a moment to sign one of our attendance clipboards that are now making their way around. Though you're not obligated to sign, we appreciate your information and we use it only for church purposes. During the service, we offer an opportunity to share a brief personal joy or sorrow. If you would like yours to be read aloud by me, please print it on one of the index cards in the pews and either drop it in the collection plate as it comes around or bring it forward during that time of the service, and I will be glad to share it with the congregation. These cards then will be posted outside my office to be shared with our friends at other services. For those who are online, I invite you to place a joy or sorrow in the chat, and that also will be shared during this time in the service. In the foyer are listening devices, large print service programs, and hymnals for those that may find their assistance beneficial. And those of you who know who you are, there are also seat cushions because wooden pews are all the rave. Please see one of the ushers who will be pleased to assist you. I invite you now to turn your technology to worship mode. And finally, please note the announcements that are on the back of your order of service this morning. I would share with you that I am headed this afternoon to Middleborough, Massachusetts, in order to attend and participate in the installation of our once intern Bo Rivers as the settled minister in Middleborough. I'm so delighted that she has landed and that will be represented during that service. It meant two sermons this weekend, so I have simply emerged this morning from my dwelling place in the basement, and my eyes are adjusting to the light. We are so glad that you are here, and we hope that this morning is an opportunity for rest, reflection, and rejuvenation.
Good morning. Our opening words this morning are by the Reverend Michelle Collins. Some days the world's pain floods through us like water through a broken dam. Every headline, every cry of distress becoming our own. Here we come here thirsty for the wisdom to care without drowning, to love without losing ourselves in the undertow of others' sorrow. Come, let us seek together the steady foundation from which true compassion flows.
Would you please open your teal hymnals to two hymns simultaneously? You know you can do it. 1069 and 1070. I'm going to invite our music director, Matthew Johnson, to explain what we shall do this morning in order to begin our honoring of Indigenous Peoples Day. We will all sing 1069 first, then we'll move directly into 1070. Everybody sing the first verse of that, and then this half will go back to Ancient Mother, which is 1069. And then this side will sing verse 2 of the other, of 1070. And we'll keep on you continue singing 1070. And at the end, we're going to just do, we'll repeat the hey ya, hey ya, hey ya a few times. Which is our way of saying, sing whatever you're going to sing. Please rise in body or in spirit. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I feel your tears. Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your Not bad. Well done. I want to call forth our basket bearers at this moment, participants in our religious exploration program who provide an opportunity for this congregation to continue to contribute to the emergency fund of our community by collecting change. If you have change that you would like to contribute this morning to this effort, please raise your hand, and one of our basket bearers will find you quickly. And you can bring your baskets toward me. You got $100? Yes! All right, and then would the rest of you follow me to thank you. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you thank you, everywhere. Thank you. May go. Thank you. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love. Thank you so much. Everywhere, everywhere you may. Thank you. Been thinking a lot lately about the experience of forced removal. As we continue to experience the presence of armed and masked federal agents who are tasked with hunting down those deemed illegal in our communities, as well as the forced removal of people from their homes by landlords whose sole purpose in purchasing residential property is to upgrade it for either resale or in order to raise the rental value to market levels that continue to marginalize the majority of those who have lived on such property or who are desperate to find housing. Furthermore, I've become increasingly aware of the logic behind the purchase of undeveloped lands for the purpose of creating profit for corporations and individuals who see pristine parcels of nature as more of a burden and more of unrealized possibility than to have value in and of themselves. This morning, I want to suggest that all of these have a common basis in a social conception grounded in a 500-year-old set of religious doctrine that gave the first colonizing forces of Europe the right to claim lands that they had discovered. Their word, not mine. And to force those who already inhabited those lands into bondage of slavery or subservience or extinction. In her book, White Trash, Nancy Eisenberg writes, in the English colonial vision, distant America was a wilderness of an almost inconceivable dimension. For the French, it was the habitat of a simple and uncorrupted people whom were whimsically called cannibals, slyly challenging the popular image of brutes gorging on human flesh. Though they had never seen native peoples, of course, the English were at least more practical and more Anglican than the French in their outlook on the Aboriginals. They believed them neither dangerous nor innocent, but empty vessels waiting to be filled with Christian, no less commercial truths. The English imagined the Indians as useful allies in fulfilling English aspirations, possible trading partners, and subordinate to be sure, but above all, a natural resource to be exploited for the greater good. Attaching empty to this metaphor, as a metaphor to a mysterious land, served the legal purposes of the English state. Without recognizing owners, the territory was available and waiting to be taken, even for the bookish English cleric Hakluyt. The trope of conquest he used presented America as a lovely woman waiting to be wooed and wed by the English. They would become her rightful owners, her deserving custodians. I want you to think about that logic while looking at that table. It was all a fiction, of course, because the land was not really inane, vacuum, void and vacant as the English conceived it. However, any land had to be taken out of its natural state and put into commercial use. Only then would it be truly owned. The basis of this ability to claim distant lands as owned by those invading comes to us in the form of a religious doctrine some 500 years ago. Antonia Malchek notes in her 2024 article, The Doctrine of Discovery's Disastrous Legacy, the doctrine of discovery is a set of papal bulls issued in the 1400s in which the then Pope gave official Catholic blessing to Portuguese and Spanish monarchs wishing to claim land they'd discovered, as well as all the land's resources and people. A Pope issues a declaration or a bull today in the 2000s, and much of the world might not notice, but in the late 1400s, the Catholic Church in Europe was nearly all-powerful. These documents gave express permission for the thefts, oppressions, and genocides that the monarchs of Spain and Portugal were already eager to pursue. Bull Romanus Pontifex wrote that the introduces the papal encyclicals translation, is an important example of the papacy's claim to spiritual lordship of the whole world and its role in regulating relations among Christian princes and between Christians and unbelievers, heathens and infidels. This bull became the basis for Portugal's later claim to lands in the New World. The first bull, Dum Veritatis, was issued by Pope Nicholas V in 1452 for King Alfonso of Portugal. The second in 1455, also for Portugal, was Romanus Pontifex, and granted King Alfonso the right to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue Saracens, a word used for Muslim people at the time, and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ. And the kingdom's possessions and all the movable goods whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. In other words, writes Malachek, granted the King of Portugal the right to appropriate all said kingdoms, possessions, etc., that Alfonso's representatives happened to come across, and convert them to the crown's own use and profit, including people. In their book, Unsettling Truths, the ongoing dehumanization legacy of the doctrine of discovery, Mark Charles and Songchara comment that the church claimed that what benefited the European colonial powers would benefit the church. The warped Western social imagination that saw slavery as just and legal institution would be rooted in the dysfunctional assertions of this papal bull. The doctrine of discovery deemed as just and lawful what benefited the European powers, affirming the privilege of the pure European Christian to determine what is right and just. Because the pure European body held an inherent spiritual worth, the actions of European Christians would be deemed just. And King Alfonso, as the true image bearer of God, held the right to discover the land and to pass along the rights to that land to his children and to his people. Alfonso would operate as an agent of God, while the conquered and enslaved people would have no agency before God. The doctrine of discovery created the possibility of significant harm upon those outside the privileged position of the pure European body. Let me repeat that line again. The warped Western social imagination that saw slavery as just and legal institution would be rooted in the dysfunctional assertions of this papal bull. Later, the authors of Unsettling Truths add the doctrine of discovery presents an example of the impact of a dysfunctional Christian theological imagination on social reality. At the heart of this critique, there is this notion of social and theological imagination. To understand the important role of social imagination, one must first grasp how social realities are constructed. Here the authors note Peter Berger and Thomas Luckman present a theory on the construction of social reality. They argue that social systems are formed through the interaction of multiple factors, including externalization, institutionalization, and internalization. Individuals entering a social system contribute to that system through the externalization of that individual's identity and values. The individual's values and perspectives are externalized into the system, helping to shape that system. Think about the way in which churches come into being. Congregations that gathered like this one in 1841, families who found themselves attracted to the message of universalism, who saw with each other a common set of values that they wished to perpetuate by crafting a community. That particular founding began with a set of values, right? Commonly held, but externalized in order to be able to recognize what had brought them together. The full construct of a social system, however, is not simply attributable to the individual of influence of individuals. Berger and Luckman assert that institutions can take on a life of their own through the process of institutionalization. I argued this in seminary in a paper that I wrote about the professionalization of ministry and the bureaucratization of denominations. Right? That at some point, the grassroots that begins a movement, right, begins to create institutions to guide that movement, but ultimately, as the institutions evolve and become more complex, they begin to operate in a way that is in service to their own survival as an institution and not necessarily in service to the values that were shared and externalized in the creation of that institution. Any of you work for a corporation that professes values that it wants to project into the world but is hell-bent on surviving whatever it is that needs to be survived, regardless of what values are ultimately perpetuated? Right? I argued in that paper in seminary that, ministries that began with people who were recognized by congregations as authoritative teachers, people who could demonstrate both wisdom and an ethic that was to be modeled, right? Began the process of creating a vocation that turned into a profession that went from ministers serving people in the congregations to people who became ministers in order to serve people in different settings, which set up different professional boundaries. And so we went through this iteration years ago where you were either a parish minister or you were a minister of religious education or you were a teaching minister or you were an administrative minister. A bunch of us are going, what the hell just happened? Right? Thankfully, our movement has begun to recognize that the basis of ministry ought to be that common call to serve what was initially externalized. But denominations are no different than the evolution of the profession, right? Denominations that begin in an opportunity to reflect the need for an entity to be able to help congregations find ministers, or an entity to go to if the minister misbehaves, or an entity that can gather the resources in order to construct a religious education program, right? Become entities that ultimately end up having to grapple with whether or not they're going to direct all of their resources toward that particular mission, or whether or not the resources need to be redirected in order for them to survive whatever it is that's happening. So Bergman and Luckman assert that institutions can take a life of their own, and process of institutionalization, social systems become an external object that is institutionalized and now begins to exhibit a value system that has moved beyond the specific values of individuals who initially shaped the system. The institution has the capacity to outlast the individuals that originally established it. In turn, the institution begins to influence individuals within the system through the process of internalization. The institutionalization of the social system helps create an external objective reality, and individuals within the system now begin to take on and internalize those values and reality. The process of internalization completes the cycle. Externalization, institutionalization, internalization. The institution has fully moved beyond the influence of individuals and now that initially created the system, and the institutionalized system now has the power and capacity to perpetuate itself with continued influence upon anyone who enters the system. The social construction of reality reveals the power of internalization. Dysfunctional messages generated by dysfunctional systems impact those within the system. Even individuals who may have a strong sense of self-worth or who seek to retain their cultural identity may eventually succumb to the power of internalization, which can diminish both their self-worth and their cultural identity. Mark Charles of Unsettling Truths demonstrates this, relating a story out of his own ministry. One Sunday, I was teaching in one of the churches on our reservation, and I concluded with a call to bring the gospel to the ends of the earth. I specifically challenged the church to consider participating in missions outside of our reservation. And after the service, I was approached by one of the grandmothers of the church. She approached me. Appreciated my message, but wanted to remind me that while such a call to missions might be possible for someone who had earned a college degree, she and so many other members of the church never went to college. They didn't have degrees and therefore could not become missionaries. Charles writes, the Western mission model, which is rooted in the doctrine of discovery, in the Western mission model, rooted in the doctrine of discovery, the primary role of heathens is simply to receive the message and the charity of their benevolent, generous, and well-educated missionaries. If they show real potential and demonstrate extraordinary ambition, they might be able to work their way up to a support role, but they will never become full partners in the gospel. The message that was externalized by early missionaries became institutionalized in the churches throughout the reservation and is still being internalized by congregants. In similar fashion, the doctrine of discovery emerged from an externalized worldview by European Christian powers that became institutionalized in the European colonial powers and would become internalized by the world conquered by those European powers. I'm mindful here of my colleague Carrie Jackson's lesson about charity and the difference between charity and justice. Charity, she once said, is transactional. Justice is relational, which flies in the face of a construction of social realities where some are deemed unworthy to be brought into authentic relationship, consigned by their inherent state to only receive the largesse of those who have been deemed more worthy. Such awareness often gives me pause when I encounter attempts to solve the problem of, name it, the problem of poverty, the problem of homelessness, the problem of domestic violence. Because far too often that conversation begins among agencies and municipalities who have the power to distribute resources and give access to those resources to those who are deemed acceptable by those agencies and municipalities. And I wonder what the process might look like and how it would function if we turned that process on its head and began gathering those whose lives had been turned upside down and placed them at the center of the conversation. And I think placing them at the center of conversation is actually demonstrating a colonial way of thinking, creating space and community so that we are all able to center on their experience may be more apt. partnering and companioning them to communicate what processes would be most beneficial to assist in gaining housing or employment or safety or physical and mental health. If the conversation here could begin with asking what their experience has been and what they imagine themselves being able to be and do given the opportunity to thrive. So much of what we do as charity brings with it the trappings of a system that says you are only worthy of charity, not companionship, not community. Such relationships would elevate the role of imagination to envision and feel beyond present circumstances and systems to create different possibilities and potential. Philosopher and theologian Cornel West remarks that this is often the difference between hope and optimism as well, saying, I think it's very important to always draw a distinction between hope and optimism. Hope and optimism are two very different things. Hope is about making a leap beyond the evidence that is given to you. Optimism usually looks at the evidence and sees whether it's possible to infer that things are going to get better. So you see, hope is over against the evidence sometimes. Optimism oftentimes, again, has to do with being a spectator. How do things look? How are things going down there? Is the evidence allowing us to lead us toward a conclusion that we ought to be optimistic? Whereas hope is in the mess, in the muck, in the mire, in the funk. And it helps create new evidence. Because when you are in a funk, when you are in a mire, when you are in a mess, your actions, your attitudes, your inspiration, your impact on others can create new evidence. So people have asked me for weeks, what the hell do we do now? And I go back to West. I'm like, well, where are you? Well, I'm reading everything and I'm looking at everything, which means we're all trying to find out if there's evidence that things are going to get better, and we are sinking deeply into the mire and the muck. And instead of actually leaping into it with everything we have and saying, this is not the reality that we are going to continue to abide, we complain, we bitch, because we can't find any evidence that things are going to get better. There is no evidence that things are going to get better. Let me be clear. The only way things are going to get better in our world is when we decide to stop looking for things to get better and actually participate in the creation of better things. Which means stop reading all of the things that make you feel like you are impotent. Start looking around you. Start companioning the people closest to you into the fullness of their being. Start creating opportunities for communities to cooperate with each other in ways that enliven their power and potential as communities. Think about the ways in which you enter conversations that can actually enliven people to remember their own possibility. And go from there. My effort this morning is in part to share how I think we as a community, country, and world got here, but also to point to the possibility that this isn't the end of the process. As impotent as many of us feel to effect real change in our current climate of ugliness and hatred, I would call us back to the basic task of religious community, those values that were initially externalized before they were institutionalized, which is to propagate a different vision of the world, a different vision of human possibility, a different understanding of the divine, and the possibilities that are afforded us when we operate differently. What if? What if instead of buying into the narrative that people are illegal, we continue to construct a narrative that people are sacred? What if we imagined that owning land came with the responsibility to cherish and support the people who were already on it, and perhaps give up the notion of ownership entirely in favor of mutually beneficial custodianship? What if we turned our attention away from self-protection and instead envisioned ourselves as heralds of a new way of being? Our Christian brothers and sisters call that the kingdom of God, where we are all housed, where we are all fed, where all are occupied purposefully. And no one dies because others are still trying to control them. There's more to come on all of this. But for now, let us say, amen, and blessed be. I'm looking to see if my friend Tara is here. She is not. So I want to, again, have us point to our table here. I want us to pause and remember the nameless who are identified on this table as Jane Doe twice, Urali Santos, Carrie Fidalgo, Melissa Javier Pablo, Chantel Gillespie, Kylie Montero, Marie Hunt, Maria Teresa Payancella Loja, Rose LaCroix, Rose Jessie Lamore. Thankfully, this year there are less names on this table than there were last. But there are 11 names that shouldn't be there to begin with. Which is why each year during the month of October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we pause in order to continue to honor the work of our YWCA and their domestic violence program. The program provides needed advocacy for those who have survived domestic violence and are continuing to strive to find a safe place and to manage their lives in ways that will create opportunities for themselves and for their family. We need this particular service in our community because we have not yet understood our responsibility as a community to step in when these kinds of things rear their ugly head. And so we, as a community of faith, take it upon ourselves to be reminded, which is why our 50-50 collection this morning will go to the YWCA's domestic violence program. As is our tradition, once a month we take up a 50-50 collection, and that money which is offered that is not in service to one's pledge to this congregation is split between the congregation and the designated agency, this month, the YWCA. So if you are writing a check and you want it to be solely in service to your pledge, please put pledge in the memo line. Otherwise, the money received will be split between the congregation and the YWCA. I am forever grateful to my colleagues at the YWCA who continue to stand between harm and those who have been harmed, and to stand with those families that recognize that they are beginning to and often come to realize how much inherent worth and dignity they have. So it is right and real and true that we would honor them with this offering. This time, the morning offering will be received. But Aaron, you skipped the eighth principle moment. And you remain silent? On all of the days of the year to forget the eighth principle moment, Indigenous Peoples Day Sunday, ain't it? So I want to apologize to Rachel Keogh, who has graciously offered to provide our moment this morning, and invite her to the pulpit.
Good morning. Hello. My name is Rachel Keogh, and I am a member of the Eighth Principle Task Force. UUCW's Eighth Principle Task Force aims to educate and inspire our community to incorporate anti-racist and anti-oppressive commitments as part of our faith. The Eighth Principle Moment is a monthly opportunity to think more deeply about how racism and oppression manifests in our everyday lives, and continue to hold such issues in the forefront of our hearts and minds. In recognition of the holiday tomorrow, find ways to celebrate the voices, histories, and wisdom of Indigenous people. Let it be a day of reflection and responsibility to remind us that the land we live on carries stories far older than our own, stories of resilience, stewardship, and community. In August of this year, I traveled with our son to California to drop him off at college. We did some sightseeing, which included a tour of Alcatraz Island in San Francisco Bay. We knew that Alcatraz had been a federal prison and learned on the tour that it closed in 1963 due to a decaying infrastructure and high operating costs, and remained abandoned until 1969. We also learned about the Native American occupation of Alcatraz from 1969 to 1971. On November 20th, 1969, a group of Native American college students and activists landed on the island and announced their occupation, claiming that under the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie, unused federal land should be returned to Native people. Under this treaty, the protesters viewed the empty island as an opportunity to reclaim space that had been denied to them. Any surplus federal land was supposed to be returned to Native people. Their proclamation declared their intention to build a cultural center, museum, and university on the island that would celebrate Native heritage and provide opportunities for education. The occupation quickly grew in visibility and drew supporters from across the country, representing many different tribes from a wide range of nations, including Mohawk, Cherokee, Lakota, Navajo, and Sioux. Life on the island was difficult. Without electricity, running water, or reliable supplies, the protesters faced constant challenges. Yet they created a functioning community that held meetings, cultural events, and educational activities. Media coverage and visits from public figures such as Jane Fonda, Marlon Brando, Anthony Quinn helped amplify their message. And for a time, Alcatraz became a symbol of unity and pride for Native people nationwide. Over time, divisions within the occupiers, dwindling resources, and government restrictions weakened the movement. By mid-1971, the occupation had shrunk, and on June 11, 1971, federal marshals and FBI agents removed the remaining activists, bringing the 19-month demonstration to an end. We were told on the tour that although the activists did not secure Alcatraz as Native land, the occupation had a lasting impact. It brought Native issues into the national spotlight and contributed to a shift in federal policy where the U.S. government moved away from termination policies that stripped tribes of recognition and instead supported Native self-determination. To end, I'd like to just put out a friendly reminder about the Linktree, which is a repository that houses interesting links to information in one place. Emily Stolarski, also a member of the 8th Principal Task Force, crafted the format and placed it on our church website under the 8th Principal page. Here are some examples of links of information you will find there. Black-owned businesses in Worcester, the Worcester Black History Trail, UUA's Side with Love e-newsletter, article on the impact of 1930s redlining in Worcester, Worcester Sucks and I Love It, Bill Shaner's alternative local news outlet, the Village Worcester Afrocentric Cultural Learning and Healing Center that builds grassroots power by connecting BIPOC groups. Thank you.
We come once again to that time in our service when we're given pause to consider what is deepest in our hearts or most profoundly on our minds, or in the work of our hands in the days that have transpired, or in the prospect of days to come. Joys and sorrows that touch us deeply and are given another measure of meaning because of our capacity to share them in the midst of a company that claims us as a co-journeyer. So I invite those of you who have joys or sorrows this day to form lines on either side of the sanctuary, to come and speak briefly into the microphone, telling us first who you are so that those using our auditory enhancement devices might also participate in this important ritual, and then to light a candle if you so desire. And if you would like me to read your joy or sorrow, you're welcome to bring it forward on an index card, and I'll be glad to share it. Once again, those of you who are online, if you have a joy or sorrow that you would like to have shared, please place it in the chat, and we will make certain to include it during this important time in our service. Are there joys or sorrows to be shared this day? Two were given earlier. I will begin with Paul Marr, who is remembering his brother, Stanley, who was killed on October 16th, 1969 on Fern Street here in Worcester. And Andrea Cruz, who says, I brought my oldest Victor to a contra dance last night. It was his first time, and for me it felt like going home. It's been almost 10 years for me, and Victor loved it. He's so excited to learn the steps better for the next time. And I'm so happy and feel so alive today.
Hi, my name is Laura. I've been coming here for quite a long time, since my daughter started Spirit Play. And now, full circle, where my little man, grandson Mason, gets so excited. It's either kindergarten or Spirit Play. I've always been in kind of rather introvert here, unless I'm talking about animals, then I become chatty. But I think I've almost boxed myself in, because although it's exciting and fun for Mason, many times I walk through here and I just remember all the things that my daughter used to do here. As many of you know, my daughter's been homeless for a little over 3 years. I haven't heard from her in a few weeks, so I often listen to the police scanner to make sure that she's not there. As I box myself into even more of a box, that on social media just reels me back into a woman that I have seen, and then you Facebook stalk and you're like, oh, there's like 8 mutual church people. So I always find like there's a reason why we are where we keep coming, and as many times as I seclude myself, just one little friend request about Marky Mark going to Flynn's just reeled me back into this this church group. Thank you.
So, who had the ceremonial turning of the thermostat this week? I love fall. I grew up here. I grew up in New England. I grew up in Massachusetts. The whole deal. The older I get, the corner I get about it. I live at the pumpkins, the apple orchards, the whole thing. The trees, the chilly nights. It's the whole edge, wraps and sweaters and the flannel. But when I turned up the thermostat this week, I had to remind myself what a privilege it is to have heat that turns on, to have a warm place, to have radiators that make that wonderful noise that make me sleep better, because like they were when I grew up. They steam and they bang but I had to stop and check my privilege a little bit and go, how exciting, how to be able to crank the heat. And that's it.
Hi, my name is David. I've been coming here on and off, but very happy to be coming here more consistently this fall. I guess I'm zooming out and somewhat touched by the reflection that Reverend Aaron gave. As I was heartened to hear, I'm sure a lot of people were, that hopefully it'll be lasting. Who knows? Another ceasefire in Gaza, which is hopefully the worst aspects of the genocide there will end. But also just to remember that it's the attention might fade from the media, but it's ongoing. generational struggle to end apartheid and to see freedom and equality for all the peoples there from the river to the sea. So thank you.
My name is Betty Genuine, and I am a proud member of our native plant Garden On team. The year was 1999. Barbie had just been inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame. And the Reverend Aaron Payson had begun his ministry here at UUCW. It is with connection. It is with great joy that the Garden On team, immediately after the service today, will dedicate a yellow birch tree in honor of the Reverend Aaron Payson and his enduring ministry here. If you exit by that door there, you will be right at the location of the brief ceremonial planting of the tree. Please join us. And to the best of my knowledge, our postlude today, the birch tree by Jan Sibelius, is a total coincidence. Rock on, Aaron.
Good morning. I'm John Brooks. I wanted to give you an update for those of you who've been following the saga of my brother kind of loosely from last year. Over the summer, I went with my parents to England to meet with him. We figured out where he was. We were able to arrange a meeting with him, and it really did not go well at all for a couple hours, and then the glass started to crack a little bit. And pleased to say he's doing well. He is in England. He's never coming back. My parents are there right now. It was his 51st birthday this week, and they had dinner with him and his current partner, and he is working at a pub in some beautiful country town in the Cotswolds. So it's not the worst thing in the world. So he seems to be getting better. We're in more and more communication over time, and again, if you're struggling with mental health issues, do something about it. And don't wait till it's too late. On the other side of things, my nephew, his son, who lives in Portland, Oregon, I texted him this week to see how things were going in the war zone and if he's surviving with all the stores being closed. And he said, "Oh no, we're good." But on the Portland front, I'm one of the things that I'm very sort of heartened by recently is in their very Portland, Oregon fashion, the way that Portland Oregonians are just mocking the fascists. And the mockery of fascism is an incredibly important tool to use against authoritarians. It always has been. It is why Jimmy Kimmel was almost canceled. But then people started canceling Disney and money won out. Authoritarians and fascists really, really hate being mocked. And so showing up in the streets in giant inflatable frog costumes in front of ICE militants is actually incredibly important because it reveals everything for how absurd and what an underlying lie it all is. But he's fine in the war-torn streets of Portland, Oregon. That's giving me some joy and hope this week. So.
Hi, I'm Meredith Niman. Following Portland, I'm from Chicago, and it's really bad there. It's everything I hear is a neighborhood that I've lived in, places where I've had friends and neighbors. It's bad, and I knew that coming here would be good. I didn't realize how helpful it would be to hear your words, Aaron, and yours, Rachel. Thank you. I'm trying to hold on very closely to this distinction of hope and optimism, and I'm trying to imagine new worlds, new possibilities, and I'm really grateful to be here and sharing this space and these ideas and these hopes with all of us.
Let us be in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, we come on this day of remembrance, eager to witness to the importance of the history and experience of our indigenous brothers and sisters. Mindful of our privilege as we move into new seasons, grateful for the opportunity that we have to recognize family and to celebrate with those whom we love. The passing of time brings us once again to anniversaries of those who have gone before, and on this day we would honor whole nations of people that are the legacy of our ongoing work, or that we are the legacy of in our ongoing work. Let us be gentle with ourselves and courageous in the face of those who would deny that work, in order that we move with imagination into our future. Amen, and blessed be. Would you please turn to responsive reading number 518 in your gray hymnals? Grandfather, look at our brokenness. We know that we are the ones who are divided. Grandfather, Sacred One, teach us to love, compassion, and honor. Would you please rise in body or in spirit, and with your gray hymnal in hand, turn to hymn number 366. My friend and colleague Jane Zepka writes, "When all is quiet and we are small and the night is dark, may we hear the tender breathing of all who lie awake with us in fear, that together we may gather strength to live with love and with kindness and with confidence. Amen, and blessed be." Please be seated. Are there any announcements? Seeing none. Let me just say to you that the excellent. October 29th, the men's group is gathering at Craig Van Battenberg's place to learn about electric vehicles. Yes.
I saw one other here. Somebody else had one on too. So this takes about a week to get here. There's something happening in about a week, isn't there? So I'm going to be wearing mine to the No Kings rally, and I encourage you to get one. It takes about a week to get, and I encourage you. There is a QR code in there. Order one, and let's see them at the No Kings rally.
Excellent. Also, for those of you who have not discovered it yet, we have launched our first podcast that contains the reflections of Sunday morning. We have all of the reflections through September and last week already posted. Today's reflection will be posted later on this evening. So take a look on our website. It's on a variety of different platforms. So whatever one you're using, you will likely find it there. Seeing no other announcements at this time, let's eat. No, let's go outside to plant a tree. 2 minutes.